Hello and welcome to The Actor and the Engineer. My name is Paul James. I'm the actor.
My name is Josh Knapp. I'm the broadcast engineer.
I closed another play and I just want to begin the show and just get it over and done with really quickly. I closed another show and I don't know if anybody heard the podcast where I was talking about the opening night and nerve-wracked, and then the one reviewer didn't come until the second night, and then I felt fully confident even though I saw him in the hallway, and I got a little scared and I thought, okay, I need to make a choice here, whether or not to decide to let this guy bother me or do I just put my foot down and do what I got to do. And it was one of the best shows that I've ever had because I completely focused on what I was doing versus worrying about somebody writing about me. Well, both reviews came out and both were pretty good. The first review, which was the one where I was nervous for opening night, didn't mention me at all.
Mm-hmm. I read that one.
Yeah, it was interesting because I wasn't expecting that. I was a significant character to the second act and what the main character goes through. So to not be mentioned was not something I was expecting. I was like, good or bad, but not being mentioned. Actually, it was such a relief. You know, I was like, woo, I'm cool with that. Actually, I'm good. No news is good news, right? So I'm good. And the review was really good. She called it art and it was really nice. Well, the interesting thing about it was when the second review came out, being fully confident and putting my foot down and deciding I'm going to do what I've come here to do. And I was worried that he was going to tear me apart. And then I would have no gauge and no barometer about any of this because obviously completely nervous, get left out of the review, although the review was positive for the play and everybody else. And then the second one, fully confident and then get tore apart, I wouldn't have known what to do. He didn't. He said very nice things about me. He did not like the play. Yeah, he said that I did a really good job in spite of the play.
Wow.
So, yeah, I'm going to take it for what it is. Yeah. He said that about a lot of people in the show. But overall, another positive experience. And I feel fortunate to have done it. And the Generic Theater has been so kind and just put their arms around me and have taken me in. So it's been a powerful experience. The other thing I want to talk about really quick is how people call things into their universe. It's going to sound like a BS story, but it's the total truth. I was sitting out on my back patio and I was thinking, how come I've never had that scene in a play where I get to just cry and just let it all out? I got all these tears. I cry up over the stupidest thing. McDonald's commercials make me cry. Little thank yous in plays make me cry. Why have I not had that scene? I'm always playing these kind of like brutish characters who don't have that scene. Well, in comes this play Row, and I'm reading it. And I was like, oh, there it is. But I didn't realize at the time that scene was something that I called in my universe until I read it for the first time with the actress and for the first rehearsal. And the tears started flowing. And I was like, wait, what's happening here? It's actually happening. So it was a fortunate experience that I got to get that out of me and do that on stage every night. The crazy part is that it stopped halfway between the first rehearsal and opening night. It just stopped happening. And I was like, oh no, now what do I do? And I was like, oh, this is the lesson. Like, this is the life lesson. And this is the acting lesson of how to make this stuff happen on a regular basis. And so I got a lot of advice, and somebody said, well, you need to change it up. You're focused on those moments, so change it up. And that totally worked. And there was one rehearsal that we did it for the first time off book, and nobody else in the cast has seen the scene except for the director and the other actress in the scene. And dude, I'm telling you, talk about the dead zone. The whole world shifted, and I could actually feel and hear, I could feel the air being sucked out of the room, right? It was amazing. And then after it was over with, there was this silent applause where everybody just kind of like took a moment to go, what was that? And I was like, it's been happening recently. I don't know what that was. And then the director, during notes, we had two directors, a male and a female, and this was the female director. And she said, whatever you're doing, don't change a thing. I know exactly where you're coming and going. I understand exactly what you're doing. And that pizza scene, which is what we call it, the pizza scene, she said, and she couldn't find words. And then they all broke out in applause. everybody in the rehearsal hall. And I was like, okay, so no matter what happens from now on, that happened. And no matter where it goes or what's next, that happened to me. And I was like, please just let me do that one time on stage, just one time in front of people I don't know. And it was kind of happening and not happening. And it was kind of there for opening night, but not really. It was kind of there for that second night for the reviewer, but not really. And then family members came, and my father came, and friends came, and the people who helped me run lines came. And I just wanted it to happen one time when somebody I knew and cared about was there. But I also gave myself a break. I was like, you know what? The scene's really good regardless. It's just natural and it feels right. And there are new things happening, and we're discovering stuff. And the woman that I was working with, we have this amazing chemistry together, and she just is like, wow. And I'm just, wow. And we're just, going for it, and we're trying different things. And my niece came on the same night that the person who helped me run lines, my friend Lily, and it was going really well. It was going really well. And there was a moment where I was like, oh man, it is going to happen, and it's going to be borderline embarrassing. Like I could feel it. And I turned and I looked at the actress, and she just kind of looked at me like, it's okay. And it just went. And it was amazing. I was like, oh, this is what this is like for like in front of other people, not just in my backyard when I'm by myself and, it's happening. It's actually happening. And then the day that my father came, he came on a matinee, and I thought that was going to inhibit me because, I could see the audience and also had to talk to the audience at one point. And I've stated that I need to stop calling that into my universe. I don't want to do that anymore. I really just want to be on stage in the lights with another acting partner or scene partner. But there's a moment where I had to stand up and look kind of off stage in the opposite direction of where my father was. And I thought, okay, well, if I can get up and look, it's not even a conscious thought. It's just something that kind of happens while you're doing it. As long as he doesn't come into my focus, I think I'm going to be okay. But there was a moment where I could just see the top of his head. And I was like, nope, saw him. Boom. And I just could not let it, I could not let it go where it didn't stop. It just kept flowing. And it was an amazing experience. So I feel very fortunate. I feel very excited. I feel very relaxed. And the last thing I'll say is I have not thought this or felt this in a really long time, but I feel satisfied as an artist right now where I just feel satisfied. So thank you for letting me digress for 10 minutes about my emotional state on stage. But it was powerful, just amazing.
That's great. Well, I've got a question for you then. So in a situation where you have to be that kind of emotionally raw on stage, multiple times, a weekend, 3 times a weekend or 4 times a weekend, how do you manage the logistical factors, like saying the words and being in the place, physically, with allowing yourself to kind of, like you said, kind of like let it go or go into that dead zone? And how do you make sure that like you're not like knocking over a chair or a glass of water, or, that you're looking at the other person? I mean, like at what point is it like rote memory for like logistically that allows you to go take yourself to that place that you don't even have to worry about those other things? It's like walking and chewing gum, or is it something else?
I have to say cumulative. Yes, it's all of that. Believe it or not, it's all of that, because I did get concerned about not being able to do that every night, and it started to hinder me. And like I said before, I got a lot of advice, but the advice that I took was this very seasoned actress who I love to death, who was in the last play with me also. She said, you've got to stop focusing on that moment happening and focus on something different. Change something up. Look in a different direction. Look at her differently. So at one point, instead of standing up when I had part of my speech, I stayed still, and I turned to her and I put my hand on her knee. And she doesn't like me at this point. This character hates me, as a matter of fact. And the look on her face of disgust and vulnerability all at one time just set me into a different motion to where that moment happened and that moment was real. So the moment that I was worried about, it didn't matter at that point because that moment happened for it. The real moment happened already. And the interesting thing is to try to make it consistent where you're in the moment the whole entire time. And I've come closer to that than I ever have. As for the logistics of it being rote and like stand up, don't knock her over. I had to eat pizza. I had to have a pizza box in my hand. I had to have a drink. I had to have a napkin. I had to stand up. It wasn't complicated, but there were things that I had to do based on how the scene was written. And honestly, I think I'm that kind of person who, if the emotional integrity is in place, all else flows. So when I did get to hit the moment, and it's a beautiful moment this guy has, he's describing his children being alive because there was a reason why his children could not be alive. And every single time I thought about, he talks about his twin boys. Every single time I thought about that, there was just this emotional connection to it. I don't know what it was. And he talks about never seeing or never hearing their voices and never seeing them play baseball. And just something about the idea of having a child and knowing that child and knowing the voice in your head that that child has, and now knowing that that possibly could not have happened, just hooked me every night. I don't know what it was. It just hooked me every night. And once it did, whatever happened after that point was just natural. It just kind of went for that. I mean, there was a moment where I knew I needed to come back and sit back down next to her. And I knew that there was a moment where I had to shut the pizza box and there were things I had to do. But once the emotion started flowing for me, that was it. And I would come off stage and I would have to come back onto stage, not but 2 minutes later, in a completely different scene, in a completely different time. And now that was more difficult than doing it on stage, because once you've adjusted to the emotional integrity of the scene, and then you have to come off and you have to be in a completely different place, you know, you got tears in your eyes, you got stuff, your nose is all messed up, and you're trying to blow your nose backstage and not make a bunch of noise. And the people backstage are affected. So they're holding on to you and you're holding on to them. And you're like, oh, how do I get out of this headspace? But I ended up just leaning into it again. The next scene was a very quick, short scene. I played a preacher in the play, and he was conducting a service. And it was the last song of the service. And then after the song's over, he says, hallelujah. And then the service is over. So instead of worrying about tears coming, I just let the tears come if they were still coming, as if I was praising Jesus, and that I was so into it that I was moved because I was feeling the Spirit. And so if I was still crying, it was because, and there was a moment when I had closed the Bible that I had in front of me and a tear dropped right next to it onto the podium. And I thought, ooh, I'm glad I missed the Bible because this is not my Bible. And I'm glad I didn't get it wet. You know, like those weird thoughts go through your head, and they're not even going through your head at the time. You know, you're having a thought that might not be what you're supposed to be thinking, but it's not infringing upon what you're doing. So I had to get advice on how to do it over and over and over again. But once it clicked, and there's a way you can kind of fake it, if you will, but I don't like that because I just don't like that. But the director said, you know, there's an emotional integrity to this scene that has to be intact every night. So you can't just, because there was one night it just wasn't coming during rehearsal. And then I just kind of like point blanked my way through the rest of it. I just took a different verb and went into a different direction. He said, you know, believable. And I liked it, but it's not where this scene needs to be or where it's been. And I was like, I couldn't feel it tonight. He was like, you need to figure out how to make it real for the moment with the same emotional integrity. I don't want you to fake the moment, but you're going to have to figure out how to make it seem like that's happening if it's not happening. Not easy to do. I think that's why, you know, I'm fascinated by the craft of acting, because I completely understand it. And then I completely don't understand it at all.
Well, the cool part about it, that one of the biggest thing that I got from what you were saying here is that you feel satisfied with your experience, and you feel like you're better than you have been before. So that is huge, that you're improving over time, and you've got people telling you you're doing an amazing job. I wasn't able to see it. I wish we were able to come and see it, but you've got people telling you you're doing an amazing job, and you're feeling that yourself. So that's got to be huge, and it's got to make you want to do it again? Question mark.
Um, mm, I'm good right now.
Too soon. Got it.
No, it's not. It's not like it's before. It was interesting because I had kind of a nervous breakdown when I did the play in North Carolina, and I was like, I'm never doing that again. It's not worth it. It's just not worth it. And then the play that I first did here, I was sort of feeling it, but not really feeling so much anxiety and nervousness. And this play, I was feeling fine all the way up until invitational dress rehearsal. And then it smacked me. And then there was one scene, like I said, I had to talk to the audience, and I kept waking up in the middle of the night. And I'm not even sure I was really waking up. I think I was having dreams about waking up, but maybe I was waking up, and I was trying to remember the lines from that scene. And there was like 8 of them, right? And I couldn't remember any of them. So every night that I took the stage, I played 3 different characters. The second character that I played, when I would take the stage, I would be like, I can't breathe. I can't swallow. Something's wrong with me. I'm going to pass out. Something's wrong with me. And I could feel I had a tie. I was a lawyer in the Supreme Court, and my tie was all the way up, and I had this little tie clip, and I could feel my neck throbbing in my collar. Doom, 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 doom. And I was like, oh my God, I'm going to throw up. I'm going to pee my pants. Something bad's going to happen. But there's no choice once you take the stage and once your line comes up, there's no other choice other than you're going to, and I would mess it up every single night. Every night I messed that scene up. I inverted lines. I started the wrong line. There was a joke line that I needed to hit, and I moved it around. It was a mess. And I was like, what's happening? That's not me. I don't do stuff like this. The one thing I do is I learn my lines, and I know them. For whatever reason, that scene just made me nervous. The only time that I got it right was the night that the young lady who helped me learn my lines came and saw the show. So I'm satisfied with that. I'm good with that because only she knew.
Yeah.
But so there's always going to be a challenge, and there's always going to be something to work towards. So it's not that I'm dead set against doing another play. It's just right now I'm a little drained from it all.
That makes sense.
Anyway.
All right. Well, this is your movie. Like I once again, I wasn't even that excited about seeing it chapter 2, but you're like, no, we're seeing it chapter. You took your dad to it?
I did.
How did that go? First of all,
I don't think he really understood it, and I don't think he really remembers much of the first one. So I don't know how it went. All I know is that he was like, well, that was a long one. That was long in the tooth. Yeah, everybody's talking about the length of it.
Well, I don't know. I mean, that we can start there, I guess. See, coming from the side of not reading the book, I looked at that and I was like, yeah, it's pretty long. And it seems like the characters, like if you were writing this as a screenplay, I think that there are certain characters that are underserved, where they just have less stuff to do, and then there's other characters that are there for a reason. The Stanley character is there for a reason to kind of give stakes to the beginning of this second film, but then the Mike character kind of kicks off everything as far as the group is concerned, but he's pretty much like forgotten in a lot of the sub narratives of the film. And so I thought that was a little rough, but I'm guessing that's how it is in the book. Like, how close to the book is this, does this like bring it home as far as movies, these two movies together versus the book are concerned?
Yes and no. What I found interesting was I couldn't really remember as much about the book watching this one as I did about the chapter 1, I guess, the first one. But then they did things that were supposed to be in the first one, that at least I thought they were supposed to be in the first one. But see, the book is different. The book is grown up and children at the same time. Yeah. It starts with the group coming back, and that's where it doesn't start with that. It starts with Georgie and that whole scene too. But it goes back and forth from adults to children. And so like you see the bike in the first movie, but you don't really know anything about the bike, although the bike takes up quite a bit of the book. And then you see James McAvoy riding it down the street and he goes, "Hi-Yo Silver, away." And that's something that he always said as a kid, but he doesn't say that in the first movie. So I thought, okay, I guess because they're looking for their what do they call them? Their tokens or their totems or whatever they are. Talismans or whatever. Yeah. Talismans, they call it at one point, I think. I think the bike is his, obviously, to a degree, but it's also the boat, Georgie's boat, and that's what he ends up using at the end of the film. So it follows the book, as far as I remember, pretty well. They change a few things at the very end, but I don't know if that ending could ever work. And I didn't know that this was a thing in Stephen King world where people thought they think he can't land an ending. And I was at a barbecue on Labor Day, and we were talking about this coming out. And somebody said, yeah, they're making a mini series out of The Stand. And I said, oh, I love that book. And he goes, yeah, but that's a crappy ending. And I was like, what? And he was like, yeah, Stephen King can't land an ending to save his life. So I think that's why that's in there with the writer character. But for me, I don't know if you could turn that visual into a real life thing at the end of that book. It's just visually like crazy. So I don't know if you could turn it into, and once we get to that point, I'll tell you the little bit of difference. But yeah, I think primarily it's the same as the book to a degree. I don't remember the gay bashing scene in the beginning of this movie in the book at all.
And it's also not, I mean, this isn't a spoiler. It's also not a kid that gets killed by Pennywise at the beginning. Whereas, you know, I'm not saying I want a child to be killed in a movie, but I'm saying that seems to be his MO is, you know, luring children and killing them. That's his deal. And this one was a different thing. It was more of like an opportunistic thing. He came back after 27 years and this is the first human to, you know, come across his path, and he just took advantage of it. So that wasn't, you know, necessarily like sticking with the specific narrative of the previous movie. But I mean, it didn't, I mean, I don't know. I don't know if they were trying to make a larger point. There was something in the voiceover about, you know, we think that evil has gone away, but we are left with ourselves or something like that. And then it goes into the gay bashing scene at the beginning. So just saying that, like, just because Pennywise is gone doesn't mean that there is no evil in the world. So yeah, I think that must have been kind of like what they were trying to do. But
I get the sense, because I trust the people making this film, I get the sense that when they wrote that, and I don't know who wrote this version.
Yeah, it's Gary Dauberman wrote the screenplay.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I don't know much about him as a writer, but I'm sure that he had the best intentions to start the movie like this, meaning this is an atrocity that's happening to these two men, and that these kind of things have to stop. And that I thought it was that Pennywise has come back. That's why the evil is brewing again. But I guess you're right, because evil is evil. It's going to exist whether or not Pennywise comes back after 27 years or it comes back after 27 years. But I just think with best intentions, they got it all wrong. They opened the movie wrong. It just didn't need all of that. It's so interesting that when people are trying to walk on eggshells about a subject, they step in the worst cliches and tropes that you could possibly find when you're trying to make sure you don't step in it. They immediately go into, why does okay, I have issues with the whole opening sequence. Other than that, I kind of love this movie, but I have a connection to this book, so that's probably why. I accept that for what it is. But I do want to talk about the beginning, because I think it's problematic, because I think that the filmmakers are trying to say something really interesting here, and they get it all wrong. First and foremost, why does the gay guy have to wear a pink shirt? Like, okay, does that like identify him as a gay guy now because he has a pink shirt on? It's offensive. And here's why, and I'll tell you why it's offensive. It's not because of who I am as a person. It's not that. It's that, I'll get to that point in just a second. And the flamboyant, for lack of a better term, gay guy has to be sarcastic and witty and have all these quips and do all these things and say these things about a beaver being on his head and blah, 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 right? Why is it that when a homosexual is presented on film, we no longer look at them as a person who happens to be gay? We look at them as a gay person. And we no longer see them as a person. We can only see them as identifying as gay. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with identifying as gay, because if that's who you are, cool, I'm good with it. But to step into these cliches and these stereotypes one after the next does not bode well for the point they're trying to make. So the second part of that is, why is it that whenever you see two gay men struggling in a fight, they never get their due? Are you telling me all gay guys can't fight? All gay guys are going to get beat up? All gay guys are not being able to defend themselves? It's not offensive. It's just ordinary at this point that a gay bashing happens the way that it happens. Why not write it completely opposite of what you're expecting? Why not write it as two men at a carnival who you really don't even know what they are if you don't want to identify them as gay. And then them kissing is so normal that it's abnormal to this gay bashing guy who's going to be this stereotypical redneck, which is another problem I have with the scene, because it's so ordinary. It's been done 1,000 times before. Okay. Why? Yes, okay, uneducated people probably have these prejudices because they haven't met a lot of people and they haven't done a lot of reading in their life. Okay, I get that. But then why are they always got dirty teeth and greasy hair and, like, you know, people from the South? And they're not from the South, it's up north. People who are gay bashers don't brush their teeth. I mean, it's just so done. It's been done a million times before. Okay, sorry, I knew this was going to happen, by the way. Then why not just shoot it as if it's a battle between two different people instead of a gay bashing scene? Okay. Why can't the gay guys fight back for a change? Why can't the gay guys get the upper hand and then be leaning up against the bridge at the end? You know, we kick their ass, and then all of a sudden the one guy turns around and the other guy gets karate chopped in the chest and falls over the bridge and falls into the water. It's no longer about them being sacrificed as a stereotype. It's them standing up for themselves, an evil one. Does any of that make sense? Like, why does it always have to be? And then the other guy is, he gets no, he does no damage to those men.
Yeah.
It just seemed to be like so ordinary. And I hate to keep using that word, but him laying on the ground, no! How many millions of times have we seen this scene? Mm-hmm. We've seen it a million times before. And it's not necessarily has to be a gay bashing scene. I've seen sexual predators holding down women while men are watching, and vice versa, and all this other stuff. We've seen this scene a million times before. Why not fight it and make it different? Fight against what it normally is and make it different, and give us something to hope for, that, hey, these guys didn't get beat up because they were gay. They got into a fight because they were gay, and they held their own. Evil won because Pennywise is back in town. Done.
Yeah.
So I'm not offended by the quippy, witty, borderline lispy gay guy. I'm not offended by that, because people like that exist, and be you. That's who you are. That's who you are. I'm not offended by it because I'm a gay man that he's wearing a pink shirt. I'm not offended by it. I'm just bored by it. It's boring at this point.
I'm going to use this as the, you know, The Good Place is coming back soon, and that's one of Steph and my favorite shows. And she says something in there which, you know, we use all the time, and it's "you basic." Like, it's just basic. It's reductive. Everything that you're talking about is just reductive all the way down. And you're right, there's ways to goose it up. And the reason why you've got the guy on the ground, you know, screaming for his loved one who's getting, you know, pummeled, is because he's telling the audience how they're supposed to be feeling. In a well-written scene, you don't need someone to tell you how to feel. You're feeling that. That's the point of good writing. And nothing against those guys that, you know, weren't in the scene. I'm sure they did their best, but I think it's just, you're right. It's a basic scene. So and there's so many other ways they could have started. Cause I'm sure that, like you said, that wasn't in the book, right? So if it wasn't in the book, then, well, I mean, maybe it was, I
I
don't know,
I
but
I don't remember, to be honest with you.
okay.
Stephen King has had scenes like that in his books before.
Mm-hmm.
I know it happens in The Stand like that, so it could have been taken from another Stephen
Oh,
King
okay.
story. It doesn't even it doesn't affect me one way or another that it's in the book. I'm definitely not reading the book again to check that scene out. Sorry, I'm not doing it.
You already have a fear of storm drains. So yeah, you don't want to
Yeah, I
make
can't
it
do
worse.
it. I seriously have one, like for real. I'm just saying that they had an opportunity, and I swear I could sense that they were trying to make a good point here. They were trying to make it how awful it is that people are still in 2019 getting beaten up because of who they love
Yeah.
or who they choose to get naked with. It's a ridiculous concept to not like somebody because of what they do sexually with a consenting adult, as long as you're a consenting adult. It's ridiculous, and everybody knows it on some kind of level. And if you don't, that's cool. That's your belief. I'm cool with that. You do you, I'll do me. I'm good. Just don't tell me what to do
Yeah.
or who to do, and I'm good. You
Mm-hmm.
know, I just think there was an opportunity here to just, because I think the rest of the film does a really good job with, it's more of a character study than a horror film. It's more of a bonding Stand By Me story than it is about a scary clown. It's about
Yeah, he's
learn.
only in 10 minutes of the movie. Pennywise is.
Yeah,
Yeah, I agree. I agree with you on certain things. I didn't fall in love with this movie. This movie was just kind of like it was just a technical exercise for me. And, you know, we
Hmm.
can get into that later on. But as far as the like scares and things like that, I didn't have many jump scares or anything like that really, you know, caught me off guard. But we've talked about this in the past. For me, you know, a demon clown doesn't scare me because I can easily brush that off and be like, well, that's not a thing. So, but you know, there's other things that are super scary to me that are, you know, grounded in reality that this didn't necessarily have. I mean, there are ingenious things in this movie. I mean, later on, some of the things that happen in the house at the end of the at the end section of the movie. And that's the other thing, is that I think the reason why this movie feels long is that it feels like it's got a little bit of, you know, Lord of the Rings creep, where it's like, okay, we're going here for the end of the movie. Okay, no, we're actually going to go over here for the end of the movie. And they're like, okay, well, no, we got to go back in there for the end of the movie. There's like a three-tiered, you know, kind of like, this is it. This is the big boss at the end, and it, you know, keeps pushing, pushing, pushing. So that's the part that kind of bugged me. And the other problem is, you know, full disclosure, I saw the movie at 9:45 at night, and there were, I think, 50,000 trailers before the movie. So, yeah, it was, I didn't check my watch, but it was probably 10:10 by the time the movie actually kicked off. There had to be at least 20 minutes of trailers. And, you know, I like trailers, but I don't know. It just seemed a little long, and, you know, I don't want to knock uh, Alamo, but yeah, it was. Whew. I don't know if they're required to show all those or not, but I did get to see.
Yeah,
Did you see
I think they are.
the Harley Quinn teaser before? Did they play that?
With the clown.
Yeah, where it started off with the clown, and then she's like, "Clowns are so boring," or whatever she says. Okay, yeah. So
Yeah.
I did get to see that, and I mean, so there's a couple little things that. Oh, and the Doctor Sleep trailer, which makes sense that they would, you know, play that before this one, since it's a Stephen King movie. That one looks. I just want to see all of the Shining recreations. Like, I just want to see that, because I want to see how accurate they can get, and whether it look. My guess is that this is my little like mini review of Doctor Sleep without seeing it. It's not going to be as creepy as The Shining, not even close, because it's there's like that feeling of like a movie made in 1979, you know, that came out in 1980, that it just is inherently spookier than a movie that's going to come out today. That's just, it just is, just because of what it looks like. You know, The Omen is creepy, not because there's a demon child, but because it was made in like whatever 1976, you know, or same thing with The Exorcist and all those. They're just creepier because they're older, and it just things look different. The grain of the film is just it's a whole nother thing that creeps me out about those movies. Rosemary's Baby, same thing. It's just those scenes. It's a softness and a loss of resolution inherent to how I've seen those movies, and it just puts me into a situation that makes me more scared.
Well, let me explain being alive during 1976. I didn't see all those movies back then, but I saw quite a few of them, and they were creepy back then too, irregardless of the fact that they were grainy now and they look old now. And I get what you're saying. It's like going into a real old house versus a haunted house that's made to look old. There's a smell, there's a vibe, there's a feel. And I wonder if some of these films like It Chapter 2 is going to look like that 40 years from now. I doubt it, but you're right. I understand what you're saying about the clown is not inherently scary to you. I'm not scared of clowns. And I realized that in this one, what I wasn't taking into account is that these are visualizations of what Stephen King has written in a book. So I hardly ever say I like the book better than the movie because they're just different mediums and, they're just different. But when you're reading a description of a head with lobster legs coming out,
spoiler
or claws
alert,
or whatever they,
and spoiler alert for The Thing.
Sorry. Of that other movie we're going to talk about next week. No. Okay. Spoilers from this point on. It's like, go see this movie if you like scary movies and you like big,
and you've got 3 hours
long
to spare.
Movies. Okay. First of all, I do have to defend the movie for a split second. It has been a long process to getting to movies recently. They are about 20-25 minutes worth of commercials to the point where now I'm no longer worried about being on time. Because if I don't see one of the 20 million trailers, I'm fine with it. It used to be like 3 trailers into the movie, go. Yeah. Now it's 20-25 minutes. So that's not the movie's fault. Mm-hmm. That's not this movie's fault. The length of this movie is not affected by you having to sit through 20 minutes of trailers. There is problems with this movie that does make it feel long, and how people have sensed that and have problems with that. I understand. I didn't personally think it was long, but I don't have problems with long movies. Neither do you. I'm just saying that for me, but it was also the middle of the afternoon.
Yeah.
So you're talking about something that's inherently scary. Bumps in the night and noises outside are way more scarier than the possibility of a clown being possessed and coming towards you and eating you with a big jaw of teeth. That's all in the first movie, so I didn't spoil anything. But there is this sense of foreboding that they got right in this movie. There is the sense of having to deal with your past, whether or not your past is as traumatic as these people are. I will say this, I can't really remember what the adults do in real life in the book, but they all seem to be semi-successful. He's a comedian, he's a writer.
They're all super successful, except for Mike.
Yeah, and so that's one thing that they kind of got wrong, because I didn't understand why they put Ben was in the library the whole entire time, but it was really Mike who was in the library a lot of times as a kid. That's why he ends up working at the library as an adult, and that's why he ends up staying in the town. So it would have been confusing to people if they didn't already know that from the book. Why did Mike stay? Why does he in the library? Why does he live there? They could have thrown a line in there. Well, we did see Ben a lot in the library, but really it was me who fell in love with the library when I was a kid. And I spent all of my waking hours after you guys left in the library. That's why I work here now. It would have been solved like that. Yeah. Done. Because it is Mike who brings them all back together. It is Mike who tells them about the ritual of the Chud or Chud.
It's Chud.
I always thought it was Chud, but Chud, whatever. So it is him who does that. So there is this sense of foreboding because your past is now coming back. And I think everybody can relate to that. When you're younger and you make mistakes, you don't need a psychotic clown to have terrorized you as a kid to know that when you were in middle school, you might have made bad choices. When you were in high school, you might have made bad choices and bad things might have happened to you. So to actually come back to your hometown, there's a foreboding feeling that they got right. So there is this eeriness to them getting back together that I liked. I thought it worked. I like the fact that, King writes in that their memory kind of fades as they move away. Mike's doesn't because he stays in the town. But instantaneously when Mike calls, they all have some kind of an emotional or physical reaction to it. I liked all of that stuff. Here's the best compliment I'm going to give the film, and I'll give it to it right now. This is why I think casting directors deserve Oscar nominations. Whoever cast this adult film, wait, that sounded wrong. Whoever cast these adults in this film from these children is a genius. Especially Ben, the chunky kid, the overweight kid. They could not have found a better actor to play him. As soon as you see him on screen, you know exactly who he is just by the look in his face. And I thought, how did they find that actor's name is Jay Ryan? How did they find this guy? He looks just like that kid grown up and worked out, you know, like he's worked out. And Bill Hader is a ringer for Richie as a kid. And Bill Hader knocks it out of the park in this movie. He takes over this movie. Like, I know this is going to be a strange thing to say, and it's more of a compliment than a reality, but Bill Hader is borderline Oscar nominatable in this movie for me because he's such a standout.
For his acting.
Yep, he is now. Yeah, he is now. Well, he is
multiple
as
times.
Of last night again, right? Yeah. But he really is entrenched into this character. And I was amazed. You got James McAvoy, you got Jessica Chastain, Academy Award nominee, and they did great. But the standout is Bill Hader. It's amazing to me what he did with maybe not as much as he should have been given.
Well, do you feel like his character? I feel like his character had the most to do, and I also, as far as like the most business, whatever the word would be, had the most. That's like I don't know. That's like maybe like a magic term or something. Had the most stuff, and then James McAvoy seemed like James McAvoy had a lot of stuff, but I don't know how to deal with his performance because like I can't. What did you think about? I don't want to get off of Bill Hader, but what did you think about James McAvoy's performance? There's something about it that doesn't like hit with me.
I agree with you 100%. I'm certainly not going to try to analyze / criticize what that professional actor is doing, but there is something, I don't know, there's something not there for me. And maybe it's because what Bill Hader ended up doing and even Jay Ryan as Ben ends up doing, and even the guy who plays Eddie, what they do is so spectacular. Maybe James McAvoy just didn't rise to the occasion to whatever. And as for what business they have to do, I don't think that Bill Hader Richie had any more stuff to do. I just think it was Bill Hader being incredible in what he did, because that whole subplot with all of them finding their tokens or their talismans or whatever, they all have to do that and they all go through that. But the one I remember the most is Richie, is Bill Hader's. I mean, because Jessica Chastain, say that 5 times, had to go back to the apartment to find the postcard hidden in the thing, and the old lady was Pennywise, and and then James McAvoy had to go back and he bought his bike, and then he had to go back to
his old house,
the street, his old house, and then he had to reach into the gutter, which I would have never done. He had the whole subplot with the young boy, and trying to save the young boy. There's just something. I don't think that James McAvoy did a bad job. There's just something not extraordinary about it.
You could lose the little boy, the subplot of the little boy, and you wouldn't lose anything in this movie.
Well, no, you're right. I agree. I see what they were trying to do. They were trying to get you to remember Georgie through the little boy, and he gets to save one little boy, and he doesn't get to save one little boy. If he saves the one little boy, then he saves Georgie. But once you see Georgie in the basement at the end, once Bill comes out of the water and you see Georgie again, you're like, enough. Oh yeah, that's what this is all about. Yeah, I get it. Well, I personally think there were times when I was watching it that I thought, well, did we need to see 10 minutes of this backstory of every one of them finding their talisman? Did we need that? It would have been neat if it had just been done when they were getting ready. Spoiler alert. If they were getting, alerts. When they were getting ready to burn them at the end, which I guess you find that out a little bit later. When they went to go burn them, if they had an instantaneous flashback of how they got it, just an instantaneous thing of her looking underneath the baseboard or the floorboard and then her putting it into the fire. You know, Bill Hader Billy or Bill reaching his hand into the storm drain and pulling out the boat and then putting it into the thing. You only need one. You only need the Bill Hader backstory, because that, I think they were trying to allude to something else. Well, they weren't alluding to it because they talk about
very
it,
specific,
about his secret. One, I don't remember that from the book. And two, I guess I'm just having a hard time in 2019, that being such a backstory now. That's such a secret. Like, you know, like they needed something else in that subplot where Bill Hader, Richie's character, says, you know, if it wasn't because of that time I was playing video games with that guy, if I hadn't just been abused at that one moment, maybe I would feel more accepting of it. I don't know, there's something missing. It's like, you know, he's going to the clown is terrorizing him with the secret of him being gay. Ooh, it's so scary. You're gay. It's like, well, it's just so it's so overdone.
Yeah.
That you needed something else to why Richie would have a problem in 2019 being gay. Why is he still hung up on it? Why is he still keeping it a secret? Yeah. That's never explained. And that makes it ordinary for me. Oh, man, I like this movie a lot better than I thought until I started talking about it.
What is it about that scene that you liked then? Just the setup of it and the Paul Bunyan going crazy and the creepy pyramid of balloons, which was also very, I mean, the pyramid of balloons is much creepier to me than Pennywise. And I don't know why. It's just, there's something like balloons shouldn't be in that shape. Like, that's freaky.
Well, also the balloons in the beginning, when the balloons were all over the place, yeah. And then you see the one balloon rising, then you see Pennywise. That was creepy. That was scary. No, because of Bill Hader. I think I felt his fear of Pennywise and his fear of facing this fact, and the fear of, you know, the Paul Bunyan thing is definitely something that seems like it was written in a book and probably was scary as hell when I was 12 years old reading it in a book. Now it's like, what made that creepy for me is the choices that they made, and I suspect it's the screenwriter as much as it is Andy Muschietti. When the people who are in the park all of a sudden just stand still, and then they kind of don't move, and then they kind of turn just a little bit. That's creepy to me. What everybody else was doing, the choices Muschietti made in some of this film are brilliant. There's that opening sequence, to go back to the beginning, where you see the stars that go into the puzzle. When you first see Stanley again, all of those choices are brilliant. But I'm wondering, are you ever going to be able to really make a creepy, scary movie out of visuals that were written in a book? I'm not sure you can. But there are things where people have said, oh, well, I thought it was too long. And when I was thinking about the film, I was thinking, oh yeah, maybe if they did this, it would have shortened it a little bit. I can see why people had a problem with that. And it's interesting that I'm talking about it as much as if I didn't like it as much as I did, because I thought I liked it a lot more. Now that we're talking about it, I'm starting to go,
bringing you down.
Wow, I'm not. Yeah, well, I don't know if it's you. I'm just saying maybe I had more questions about it than I thought I did.
Well, we haven't talked about the flashbacks at all. So they brought the kids back, the kids who were in It Chapter 1, or just, I guess, regular It from 2 years ago, to shoot more scenes in the clubhouse and just other scenes that would help to flesh out the film and the rest of the story. But some of them had grown so much and had changed so much that they had to digitally de-age them, a la Marvel movies. You know, we talk about it, Michael Douglas and Robert Downey Jr. and, you know, everybody else that they do, but they did similar de-aging to them. Now, I'm not sure if they used the same company, Lola, that is used for all the other big budget stuff, but I'm pretty sure they probably had a decent budget for this film. But the thing that didn't necessarily stand out for me, the thing that really stood out for me was the overdubbing and the difference. I felt like the voices that they had created for these kids, which for some of them were higher. I think that the James Ransome character,
Eddie.
The Eddie character, as a young kid who played by Jack Dylan Grazer, he must have grown a lot, or his voice must have just like dropped to the floor, because it didn't. I'm sure that they did some sort of like voice sweetening on him in some way to raise the frequency of his voice and to get it to sound like he was a younger kid, but it didn't match up with his lips just right. And I'm super sensitive to that because like that's part of my job, and also that's just a thing that like a fixation that I have, and it really bugged me. That really bothered me. And but as far as the facial replacement, softening type thing, that didn't bug me too much. I didn't notice it that much. I noticed it a little bit on the Richie character played by Finn Wolfhard. And then I did also look it up today, and they did like a side by side comparison on like some screenshots, and it was like a huge difference. But when you're watching the movie, you don't see that, you don't clock it as explicitly as when you have them side by side. But that kind of really messed with me a little bit, and it's amazing we can do that nowadays. But I don't know if they had another option, but that did kind of rub me the wrong way a little bit. In that, did you notice either one of those things when you were watching the movie?
No, I didn't. But I did see a interview with Bill Hader and Finn Wolfhard, and I thought, man, Finn, you've grown. And I started noticing it in Stranger Things, and then I thought, well, they must have filmed chapter 2 simultaneously because he looks the same in chapter 2. But obviously that's not true. Mm-hmm. No, those kind of things, maybe it's a suspension of disbelief type of thing for me, but those things, once they're pointed out to me, I can't not notice it. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like, it's there forever. But if I don't notice it initially and then it's not pointed out, it doesn't really, it has to really be blatant, mustache and teeth and, bad line readings, that kind of stuff where I go, what is wrong with his mouth? Like, what, is he cold? I was like, what is wrong with Superman's mouth? I didn't know it was digitally enhanced to get rid of a mustache and his teeth were added. Do you bleed? And now every time I watch it, I've seen that movie 1,000 times because it's just one of those ones that is becoming just something to watch in the background. And every time it comes on, I'm like, I don't know what's worse, the line reading or the dubbing of it or the mouth. I don't know what's what, but I knew initially there was something wrong. But for this one, chapter 2, nope, didn't bother me a bit. I also am very emotionally affected by having a stake in these people's lives. And because I read the book and because I thought the first movie was really good, I feel like I know these characters. So to see them grown up and to see them back at the age where it all began is so sentimental and so touching to me that I think, rose tinted glasses is how I watch it. And so it's like a reunion when you see somebody in a yearbook and you can remember them from back then, but you don't see them like that nowadays. Mm-hmm. So no, that kind of stuff doesn't affect me like it affects you.
What about the end? You said you were going to kind of like bring up the difference between the book and the film and what I guess might have been good or bad about.
What I thought it was good because the choice that they made was consistent with what they chose to do in this film. And it goes back to the spoiler of the claw head or the head with the lobster or the head with the
spider legs,
the claws, spider legs, whatever. Because at the end of the book, it turns into this huge spider. Mm-hmm. And these big black legs go all over the place. And they try to do that in the Tim Curry miniseries, and it's ridiculous. It looks ridiculous. One, the technology is not there. And two, it's just the concept is really something that probably could only happen in a book. Mm-hmm. And so I thought it was smart that they kind of blended the two. It was Pennywise, gigantic, with the claw-like, spider-like legs. And I thought, well, that's a good way to handle it because you're really not letting down anybody in the book because he did look like a spider-esque type thing. But at the same time, you're not trying to reinterpret this character at the last moment. And maybe this goes back to why everybody has problems with Stephen King's endings because, in the book, it scared the hell out of me when that thing turned into that huge spider-like thing because there was nowhere they could go. Mm-hmm. It had 8 legs and everywhere they walked or everywhere they ran, the leg got one of them, that kind of stuff. And one of them dies because of it. So I thought it was a really smart way to handle it because you don't want to see a big spider defeated. You want to see Pennywise defeated. So how do you do that and still stay kind of genuine to the book? And I think they did a great job of it. And they mirrored that in the head with the spider legs. And I thought, oh, well, maybe that's what they're going to do. They're going to turn Pennywise into part spider, part Pennywise, which is kind of what they did. Except for I think he just had like 2 legs and two arms. But I thought that was a brilliant way to cover it because how do you do it? When you read it, it's scary as hell. But to visualize something like that, they probably could have done it, especially much better than the Tim Curry miniseries with modern technology. But the whole idea that Pennywise becomes something else in their imagination in order to be killed is kind of anticlimactic. So I thought it was really smart what they ended up doing. And they do shrink him in size and all that other stuff, but I think it's just the spider they shrink in size. And I don't remember, don't quote me on this. I think someone steps on it and just squashes it. I think.
So how different is that from the end of the first movie? I'm not talking about books now. I'm just talking about movie to movie. Like it's in the same place, first of all, similar place. Because it's down in like a little bit farther down into the cavern thing or whatever, but it's almost the same place and very similar to the end of the first movie, which was just kind of like, hey guys, we just don't need to be afraid, so let's just not do that. I mean, that's pretty much what they're saying. You know, at 27 years later, it's the same thing that they either didn't internalize that from the first time they battled Pennywise, or they just kind of forgot about it until exactly the right time, I guess. So for me, I felt like there wasn't enough of a difference between the end of the first movie and the end of the second movie.
I don't disagree with that. The difference for me was that in the first movie, I knew he was just going away.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And was not dead. That he fell apart and he broke apart and, kind of chipped away like paint. Like his head started chipping away like paint. And this time I could tell he was actually dying. The entity known as It was dying. But I do agree with you, to somebody who's probably not read the books and who's not that invested in it. I can see why you call that out as too similar. The only other thing I would say about, we don't have to fear this is that they've spent 27 years of their life forgetting about what happened in Derry. So they make a point about that it wasn't until Mike called that they even remembered something happened, and they really don't remember what's happening and why they're even there. They don't remember it. And so throughout doing all of this stuff, they remember, and the first thing you're going to remember is being scared. And the last thing you're going to remember is being not afraid to kill this thing because you spent this whole entire time remembering being afraid. It might be a little bit of a leap and a little bit of a reach for an explanation for it, but it doesn't bother me thinking about it. I mean, adults sometimes have to be reminded that the lessons they learned when they were children still apply when they're adults. Sharing is good. Thank you and being polite is good. Cookies and milk, good. Crayons, good. Having a best friend, good. Loving your parents, good. Saying you love your best friend, good. Having a pretty girlfriend, good. Like when you get to be an adult and you're in your 40s, you start to become very jaded to the world. And so since they were away from it all, it probably took the length of the movie, maybe not the whole length of the movie, maybe 2.5 hours of the movie, that it finally took them to remember it. But I get what you're saying, but it didn't bother me.
All right. Well, good. All right. You can check us out on the web at actorandengineer.com. You can go to facebook.com/actorandengineer, and you can tweet us at actorengineer. We'll see you next time.